Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if this is your first time here. Today I will be sharing 3 more delicious dinner recipes with you, and I can't wait to get into them today. The first recipe is for ricotta gnocchi, which I served with a brown butter sage sauce. To begin with, we're going to make the gnocchi. So you're going to start out with 1.5 cups of ricotta cheese, and to that add in 3 egg yolks, and then 3/4 cup of grated Parmesan cheese. And you're just going to stir that together until it's combined. And then we're going to add in some salt and pepper, and then our flour. So traditional gnocchi uses potatoes, if you're not familiar, but this recipe uses ricotta in place of the potatoes, and it makes for really fluffy, light gnocchi without having to worry too much about the technique, and it's really quick and easy to do because you don't have to cook your potatoes beforehand because the ricotta is ready to go and you don't have to prep it. I hope that you see by this video that these are really simple to make, even though it sounds like it is something that would be hard to do. So here, after I have the flour partially combined, I just went in with my hands to kind of combine it the rest of the way, and then I'm going to turn it out onto a floured surface and form it into a circle. From there, I'm going to cut it into 8 equal pieces just to make it a little bit easier for rolling out. And then you're just going to take each of those pieces and roll them out into a log about 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch thick. And then you're just going to cut them and toss them with some flour before setting them aside. By tossing them individually in the flour, that's going to prevent them from sticking together when you go to boil them in the water. This recipe can be made the day of, or you can prep it ahead and even freeze the gnocchi, which is what I did. So I went ahead and made this. We had our portion for dinner this evening, and then I froze the rest individually on a baking sheet, which I will show you what that looks like. And then once they were frozen, I just put them in an airtight container, and then you can pull them out when you're ready to use them, and they'll stay good in your freezer for up to a couple months. So you can use these any number of ways in soups, just on their own as pasta, with a red sauce. You could do Alfredo, but I'm going to do a brown butter sage sauce, which I'm showing you here. And for that, I'm just starting by melting down a stick of butter, and the amount you're going to change based on how many servings you need. But you want to let that melt down completely. It's going to start bubbling, and you want to let it bubble for a little bit till you start to see that it's turning a little bit darker of a color, not fully brown. And then we're going to throw in our sage leaves, and then those are going to get really crispy while the butter is browning the rest of the way. And oh my goodness, if you've never had brown butter sage, it is to die for, and you can use it for so many things other than this recipe. For instance, some people will serve it over mashed potatoes. You can also use it for like a crostini topper. It's very versatile, but the flavor is just out of this world. Now, while this makes an amazing weeknight meal, I also think this would be great for when you have company coming over, because you can have everything prepped, the ricotta gnocchi ready to go. I would just pop it in the refrigerator until you're ready to boil it, and it only takes a couple of minutes to boil. You'll know that they're finished when they rise to the top of the water, and then you are ready to serve them with whatever sauce you would like. So I think that's great for entertaining because you're not stuck in the kitchen like all night. But here you can see how brown I let that butter get. So underneath, like the foamy part, you can see that it's getting nice and dark, and that's giving a strong nutty flavor, and that's exactly what you want. So at this point, I'm adding in my drained gnocchi that I did boil, and I'm gonna let them cook in the pan for just a couple of minutes to get a little bit toasty on the outside. You don't have to do this, but I do like for it to have a crisp texture to it in applications like this. But again, if you were serving it with just like a marinara or Alfredo, you can skip this step. And here it is plated. Yes, you do want to leave the sage in there. Trust me, you're going to love it when you get a bite. And I just topped it with some additional Parmesan. Up next, we have stuffed shells. So as always, I will have the recipes either typed out or linked in the description box below for you, so you have full measurements. But for this recipe, just a little disclosure, I am kind of going off of a recipe, but I do add a lot of my own things to it. So I'm starting out with some ricotta and a whole egg, and then I decided to add in some garlic powder and some onion powder and a little bit of Italian seasoning, and then I'm just going to stir all of that together to combine, and that's going to be the filling for the stuffed shells. Now you don't have to do that, or you can use any herbs and spices that you and your family enjoy, but this was out of this world. Like, it did add a lot by adding in the garlic and onion powder and just kind of enhancing the flavors. So I recommend doing it if you like them. And then to that, we're going to add in some shredded mozzarella cheese and then some shredded Parmesan cheese as well. And you're going to see in just a minute that I end up, after I stir this together, adding in more cheese because I really wasn't measuring the ricotta. And so based on the texture, I wanted it to be a little bit thicker. So I knew I wanted to add a little bit more cheese into it. I really feel like stuffed shells are one of those recipes where you can really make it your own. Traditional recipes just have a marinara sauce. My husband wanted a meat sauce with it, so that's what we're gonna make to do it, and it was really good. So again, just use your creativity and whatever you have on hand to really make it your own. But if you want to keep this vegetarian, then obviously leave out the ground beef in the sauce. So once we have that combined with some salt and pepper, I'm gonna go ahead and get started on our sauce. I almost forgot to mention that you do want to add in some fresh parsley, so that's what I'm adding here. I actually forgot it when I was making it. I had it prepped and sitting to the side. I'm like, wait a second, this doesn't look right. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and add here. So for the sauce, it's not anything that's difficult to do. I'm just browning a pound of ground beef, and then once I get that browned, I'm actually going to add some onion powder and garlic powder to it after I drain the grease off of the meat. I like in dishes like this to flavor as I go, like each step of it. It really does make a big difference at the end. So I am going to add in some garlic powder and onion powder like I mentioned, and then also some salt and pepper. And then we will add in our jar of marinara sauce, and you can use any kind that you like here. You could also do an Alfredo sauce. I think that would be really good. Actually, that's kind of something that I would love. I love Alfredo. But anything that you like or that you have on hand would be amazing. So I started out by adding 1 jar of marinara sauce, and then I ended up adding in about 1/4 to 1/2 of another. But again, that's going to be kind of personal preference. If you weren't adding the meat into the dish, you could absolutely get away with making this just with 1 jar. But with the meat, you know, it does take up some of that sauce. So I didn't go as far when I layered the stuffed shells. So just keep that in mind. So I just have my 13 by 9 inch pan here, and I'm just going to take a small amount of that sauce, spread it across the bottom. It doesn't have to be like fully covered. And then we're going to start making our stuffed shells. And I did forget to mention that while I was doing the ground beef sauce, I did have a pot of water boiling, and I boiled some jumbo shells just until al dente. So for mine, it was 9 minutes, and then got them drained. You can set them out like onto a sheet if you want to. I just put them in a bowl, toss them lightly with oil so they wouldn't stick on each other, and let them cool. And then here you can see how we're stuffing them. So I'm just using like a spoon and cupping it inside of each shell. Now you can, in retrospect, I could have fit more into this pan. I could have made them like tighter in there, but I wasn't quite sure how it would work. Once they were baked, I did realize that I could fit more, but you're gonna see that process here. I'm just gonna go down in 2 rows and then add some along the top that I could fit in. But again, keep in mind that you could add more if you fit them in a little bit tighter together. I did have some of that filling left over, so I went ahead and just topped it kind of sporadically across the shells, and then we're gonna finish it off by topping it with the rest of our sauce, and then a little bit more of the shredded mozzarella and Parmesan cheese. So this is going to bake in a preheated 350-degree oven for about 25 minutes, or until all of the cheese is melted and the sauce is bubbly. For me, it did take about 25 minutes, but I know everyone's ovens are different, so just keep that in mind. And then we just served this with some garlic bread and a side salad, and it was absolutely delicious. Now the last recipe I'm making is for Mississippi chicken. So I've made a Mississippi pot roast before, and this is the same premise but using chicken breasts instead. And I got this idea from Jessica O'Donoghue, and I will have her channel linked down below. I want to start incorporating recipes that I see on my favorite YouTube accounts, kind of testing them out to see how they are. So if you like that idea, please let me know. If not, I'd like to hear that too. If you think it would be redundant, I don't know if you watch the same channels that I do, but I'm always curious when I see people showing recipes, like how they actually turn out. And oh my gosh, this was absolutely amazing. So in my crock pot, I just have 4 chicken breasts. I'm adding in some pepperoncinis and a little bit of the juice from the jar. And then I'm going to top that with a packet of ranch seasoning and a packet of au jus gravy mix, and then a half a stick of butter. And I did go ahead and cut that up and just put a piece on each chicken breast. And then I cooked this on high for about 3 hours. Now I think she said that it was like 5 to 6 hours for her, but I don't know if my crock pot is just different. I started to smell it and I'm glad I went over and checked it because it definitely was done. So if you wanted to cook it longer, I would do like low. But here you can see it. It almost looks like a little bit burnt on top, but it's not. That's just a seasoning packet. And then that meat just shredded apart so easily. This was amazing. You have to make this recipe. I do think it'd be great for sandwiches. I served it over rice. But I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe before you go. And I hope you all have a wonderful day.